I read a book not too long ago by a woman named Bronnie Ware down in Australia called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was a hospice nurse who worked with the dying people and talked to them. And the number one regret that people had, people who were dying, who knew that they were crossing over and making their transition, the top regret was, I wish I'd have had the courage to live the life that I knew I was destined to live. In other words, that I had a purpose, that I knew that there was something greater that I came here to do, that I signed up for something other than just to fit in and to go along and to follow somebody else's rules. And most of us are not, don't allow ourselves the freedom to listen to those internal callings, those things that we all feel are just so important to us. I can give you two examples of the two most significant moments in my life that I can think of, other than the birth of my children and all those wonderful things that took place. But I went to my father's grave in 1974, a man that I just hated. I was filled with rage and antipathy and anger towards. And I was called to go there at the age of 34. And I went there because I was just angry. I wanted to make a connection. I just couldn't believe that this man, he'd been dead for 10 years and I had just found out. And I stood on his grave for the longest time just cursing and being angry. And I went back to my car. It was down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I got into the rental car to drive back to New Orleans, and then I was going to fly back up to New York because I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City. I was been thinking about wanting to write and all of that, but nothing was going right for me at that time. I was out of shape, things weren't working well, I was drinking, I had been doing drugs, I was in a bad relationship. My whole life was just not on the kind of path that it is on today. And I got back in the car to go, and I felt I'd finally done that, and I had a calling. I was called back by some invisible intelligence, some burning desire, something that we call light, something that we call the impersonal part of us that is always directing us, and it's always directing you as well. You're listening to it sometimes. Most of the time we ignore it in the name of fitting in or doing what I don't have time, or I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, or I'm too white, or I'm too black, or I'm too poor, and endless we go with all of the reasons why we can't fulfill a destiny that we know is ours, that we signed up for, that we're here for in this infinite universe, that who we are is not this physical body that we're in that is here for a moment and gone. Who we are is this infinite intelligence, and we forget that. The same intelligence that created this infinite universe that never ends is you. You manifested in this infinite, divine, organizing intelligence. You're a part of all of it. And I got a calling, and the calling for somehow said, go back. You're not complete. That's not why you were sent here. That's not why I wanted you to go to your father's grave. I went back. Something came over me at the age of 34. I have no idea what it was. I do know now that it was light, it was God, it was that divine intelligence, whatever you call it. What I said at that gravesite, from this moment on, as I send you love, I send you kindness. Who am I to judge you? Who am I to condemn you? Who am I to be critical of you? I don't even know what you were living through and why you had to do what you did. I send you love from now on. I'd never had another bad dream about him. I was never angry about him. But the most intriguing thing happened is that my life made an entire shift. A shift that all of us can make at any moment. We never know. These callings are so strong, and yet they're always there. After I left Biloxi, I flew up to New York, flew down to Fort Lauderdale. I had 2 weeks. I checked into a motel on A1A, the Spindrift Motel, and I wrote for 14 days. And I wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones, which became one of the largest selling books in history. And it propelled my life in a whole new way. I stopped drinking. I started getting exercising more. My relationships all changed. The divine person that I was to meet showed up. My children showed up. Everything changed and shifted because I was willing to listen to that inner voice, that light that said, go back. I was on the Tonight Show in Australia a few years back, and the woman asked me the question, what is your purpose? What are you here for? What do you want to do? And I said, I'd like to understand God realization. I'd like to be able to understand and live from that place where God is within me and I know it. And one of my favorite readings I'd like to share with you is from the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East. It said, it has been clearly stated that life lived by the average individual is hypnotic. That is, the majority of men and women are not living life as it was intended at all. Not 1 in a million feels the freedom to live what he inwardly feels he should live. He has come under the world's opinion of himself, and this opinion is what he obeys rather than the laws of his own being. In this respect, and to this degree, he is living under an hypnotic spell. It's like hypnosis. He lives under the delusion that he is a mere human being living in a merely material world and only hopes to escape it when he dies and goes to what he calls heaven. This is not the determination intended in the plan and purpose of life. Obedience to one's inner nature, the expression of life as he instinctively feels it ought to be expressed, is the very foundation of the life which the masters reveal as the only true mode of living. That is very powerful awareness, that you are not this body that you're in, this body that comes and goes. You are the invisible divine intelligence within, the same intelligence that allows a clay pot to exist. And finally, from the Masters of the Far East, the second volume, the moment you become free from the belief that you are mere human beings, subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment you will see that you are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God, if you will. The moment you realize that you are divine, that you are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity, and you know that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God, man is then beginning to see and know that this divinity is not something to be injected into each other from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life of each and every person, your essence, the light within you. This is what this course is about.